Nice, we're live.
Hey, we're
What's up,
live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the MCOY stream hosted by, of course, Forward United. It was a pleasure of them allowing us to be on here. And so we have Jeannie, we have Toby. We're here. Say hi, fellas.
How's it
What's
going?
going on, guys?
And so basically, we're pretty much here just to kind of chat, shoot the breeze, and talk about some issues that's been going around the nation, around the world. And the one topic that that came to mind was this coming up election. And so the one thing that a lot of people are kind of curious about is this Joe Biden and Trump. Okay, that supposedly that these two people are going to go head to head in November. But at the end of the day, the question becomes, how is it going to affect Black folks? How is it going to affect the Black voters, whether it's the older generation, the middle generation, and the younger generation? How is this election going to pan out? And so, fellas, we're going to have at it. So anybody wants to jump in, chime in, go for it.
What's going on, guys? You know me, I'm Jeannie. Follow me on Twitter, Jeannie Shinobi. No talking about hot topic race issues without the Kona hot headband.
Yes.
But what we have right now, this Joe Biden versus Hillary. I mean, who is it? Trump, Joe Biden, same difference, same thing, different party. What I'm saying is, we did not get a good deal this time around. We got left in the dust. Us as Black men, us as young people, us as anyone under the age of 35, we were left behind in favor of who knows. People don't want to go back to how things were. That's how we got Trump. People don't want to go back. That's not where people want to go. Do you guys remember life, pre-2016? How was it for you guys?
Oh, man.
It was all roses.
I think for myself, it was a headache. It was a huge headache. And especially with everything kind of like slowly shifting. You could tell it was shifting, but we didn't know as far as which direction it is going to shift in. So it's like, okay, how are we going to do this? And what legacy I'm going to leave for the next generation behind me?
I think for me, I was just coming out of, 2016, I graduated college. So I feel like I was transitioning in my own life and I hadn't really experienced the real world. So I didn't realize quite like how so many people were struggling, right? Until you kind of had Bernie on the come up. And there were so many people and there was so much passion. And there was a lot of passion from groups like Black Lives Matter and a lot of young activists who were supporting him. And I didn't quite know how to feel because I didn't get to vote in 2012. So I didn't even I was 17, right? My first year in college, literally didn't turn 18 until March. So I couldn't really give a perspective. I respected Obama, but I didn't know enough policy wise to kind of give as much of an intelligent, like, okay, what direction should the country go? Except, I was not feeling Trump. I just knew that much. I was not feeling Trump in any kind of way. And between 2016 and now, I've still kind of been developing my point of view. I went to grad school. I still wasn't working in the real world. And it was like a lot of reflecting of what happened in 2016, particularly among Black people, because I feel like most Black people I knew did not feel either Trump or Hillary, right? At the end of the day, the people who voted, like when it came to Black voters, most went for Hillary. In this case, most seem to be wanting to go for Biden. But that's not indicative of the general population, right? That's why you had so many Black men in like Michigan, Detroit, who didn't go out for Hillary. And I have no idea if they're going to somehow magically go out for Biden. It would have been very smart to have had like Michigan to be like some kind of early state or do it a lot more focusing on the Black community there. I have no idea if that happened. Because then you could have figured out what candidates really would bring out those people who did not go home, who did not go out for Hillary and see who they would go out for. But now we're kind of left with this default choice, I feel like, of Biden. And sure, there's people who will go out for him, but I don't know. That was just my perspective.
To be honest, when To be honest, concerning Trump, when Trump first came out, and don't kick me off of this, I was kind of feeling Trump. He was this outsider. He was someone who had this different vision for the country. Of course, he was saying a bunch of this out of left field stuff, but I like the idea of Trump. You know what I mean? I like the idea of this outsider who was going to take our country in a different direction. I didn't like the rhetoric he used. I didn't like, send them all back to Mexico. They're thieves. They're rapists. I mean, obviously my Trump impression is not the best, but I liked the idea of someone who was going to change things, even if, and I feel like America chose that over the status quo. How did you guys feel when you first heard Trump starting out, early 2016? You didn't think he was going to win, but this guy was on the scene. How did you feel during that time?
Well, go ahead, Toby.
It was really just like comical. Like most of the things that I feel like I followed, like at the time I was not as engaged, right, with a lot of things politically, but then I would see a lot of articles, and this was before I even knew much about like media bias. So I was seeing like HuffPost, BuzzFeed, and I was like, there were like, everything very anti-Trump. And I was like, oh God, like, who's this guy? What's this rhetoric he's using? And I would mostly think of it though comically, like, this guy's not serious. Like even during the debates when he was the nominee and we're like, oh wow, he's the nominee. He would say things like there are bad hombres in this country, talking about like the Mexicans. And I was just like, is this man serious? Like, I was like, this man's not trying to win. He's trying to throw the election. I was actually low-key believing that he was in concert. Like some people were saying that he was in concert with Bill Clinton to try to like throw the election. And I was like, you know what, this might be true, because he's saying things that are just so whack that I don't think he was serious. And he was friends with them all. He went to the the weddings. I think the Clintons came to his weddings. He even said Clinton was a good Secretary of State in Obama's first term. So very quickly, in a few years, he then somehow flipped the script and was anti-Hillary, anti-Democrats. I was like, this guy's not serious. He's not like a real person. He's just making up his own like beliefs. So I was like, this guy is ridiculous, but I was not as much of like a hater. Like I didn't like a lot of the things he said, but I didn't quite have some of the like, I think like in the beginning of the term, there was so much happening that I was feeling like that kind of anti-Trump. This is crazy. How did we get to this point? But before that, I feel like it was just like, obviously we're not going to let this happen. This obviously is not going to happen. But in the back of my head, I also saw there was just a lot of not good feelings about Hillary. I saw it pretty deeply, and I feel like I thought that she would win, but I didn't think it was some kind of landslide that was going to happen. So when she didn't win, I wasn't even 100% shocked. That was kind of just my like overall impressions of everything.
Right. Well, I know for me, I think 2016, I was still living in Colorado. We were pretty much thinking about moving back to Michigan. And so, again, wasn't really as politically engaged when Obama ran for office, especially for those 2 terms he ran. Really didn't know. I was like, hey, it's Barack Obama. I was one of those guys who was like, yes, he's a black guy. I'm gonna vote for him because he's the only black guy that's actually doing something positive for once. Like, yes, like really didn't know a whole lot about him until like Obamacare when that came out. Then I kind of got a little bit more engaged, but I'm like, still, nah. Fast forward, here we are, 2016. I'm like, okay. Out of all the candidates, I was feeling Bernie in 2016. I was feeling Bernie. And I'm like, okay, he has some radical ideas. He has some ideas that could actually kind of continue what Obama was trying to do and get accomplished, but it wasn't as radical enough. And so with Bernie talking about Medicare for all and college tuition and this, free that, it's like, okay, I'm kind of getting an understanding, but still wasn't that engaged. And it wasn't until the what was it? It was one of the nights where Hillary and Bernie was actually going head to head. And we were looking at the totals, and I'm like, okay, it shows that Bernie won, but Hillary won. So we're like, what in the world? So automatically, I was already disengaged. I'm like, I'm not even going to watch this. I don't even care who wins because right now it just shows that it's rigged. And so again, Trump, he comes on the scene. I'm like, is he really serious about running for presidency? And again, when he got the nomination, I'm like, are we really going to have him as the nominee of the Republican Party and vie to become president of the United States? And when he won, I'm like, holy crap, he actually won. Like, I don't know how. I mean, I do, but then again, it's like, I don't know. For me, it was like I almost wanted the Republicans to do better. Almost wanted them to do better. Like I'll put it to like this: if Mitt Romney ran in 2016 and he was a nominee, I would have voted for Mitt Romney. I would have voted for him. Probably would have been the first Republican I would have voted for as far as presidency goes. He would have got my vote. But because he didn't run, like,
I remember 2008, November. Oh, by the way, hi, chat. I'll do the Trump impression a little bit later. Sass, what's going on, guys? But I remember November 2008. How do you put these chats on the screen? Someone says, this is exactly how they thought it looked like. It's making me crack up. But I remember November 2008, sitting in my room. I was a teenager at the time, sitting in my room, and it was just the happiest I was ever to be a Black person in America. It was magic. It was something like transcendent politics, American history, like all of history led to this moment. Just to find out it's just another politician with big bags in his pockets. 8 years later, when I was in the workforce. I mean, he was all right. I mean, he's on my top 5 presidents, but I'd say he's probably maybe in my top 10. But I'm trying to say is this has been years in the making. All of these shadow puppets, the Democratic Party dances in our face to try to make us feel like we're actually being fought for. And yet, anytime any real policy comes along that's actually worth fighting for, it's the Russians. The Russians are doing it. It's like, no, we have our own issues. We have our own things we want to do. Holy crap. Can we have some of our money? I mean, F word. But
I get it.
Sorry.
I get it.
Hashtag clean channel. Link to ours. But
here we go.
But to be honest, I love the Bernie movement with all my heart. I was a 2016 Bernie bro. I loved, his fire, how he could rev up crowds. The top 1% has more money than the bottom 99%. And it just but it wasn't until all right, we'll fucking curse.
Go for it.
But it wasn't until I was part of the Yang Gang this year that I realized how much my love of Bernie was fueled by my hatred of day-to-day life in America, not because I actually felt like things could get better. Well, were you any of you guys Bernie bros in 2016?
Not really. I mean, like, it was one of the things I did donate. I donated like maybe somewhere in February, maybe January. I don't remember. I just remember that I was like, this is grassroots. I realized this, and I kind of understood the significance of it. So I felt like, why not contribute to what's going on? So I gave like maybe $20 or something to the movement. But like, I honestly didn't know if I was going to really vote. Maryland is also a useless state. The primary is like April 26th. At that point, it didn't matter because I was still registered in Maryland at the time. So I was like, no, like I really don't know. And I had some good friends of mine who were, my age. They're clearly not like shills for the Democratic Party, but they were like not at all pro Bernie. They were not they not that they loved Hillary, but they just did not like anything that Bernie stood for. And actually, one of them was a huge fan of Bernie when he was in high school. He was a super far left progressive. And then he became an economics major in college. So like the way he told me, he was like, once he took the first economics class, he was like, no, never mind. And then he became much more in tune with, like, as he calls them, the politicians that actually win elections, the establishment, Steny Hoyer, Nancy Pelosi, like these people who are in power, not these like sort of offshoots who never win. Well, we have AOC, but besides her, not many of those sort of squad-like characters really won most of their districts. So like I kind of heard him and I was starting to rethink like, oh, maybe I shouldn't even be supporting him because, these are smart friends of mine, not really people who are they're not establishment people. They're like scientists like me, researchers, people of color, some of them like they were either Indian or black. So I was like, maybe I should rethink because I didn't 100% know. So I was like listening to what other people were saying, but overall I wasn't really a Bernie bro. I kind of listened to different perspectives on it all. And I understood though that he probably would have had a better time against Trump. I don't know if the country was ready for Bernie, but like Trump himself was worried. He admitted that he was more worried, many times more about Bernie than Hillary. So
I honestly believe that if Hillary Clinton would have picked Bernie Sanders as her VP, she would have won. She would have swept. Donald Trump would be a meme in history. But while there, we have a question from the chat, and guys in the chat, or girls, guys, girls, whatever you are, whatever, I don't care. Ask whatever questions you want. So there's one. What do you guys think Obama's greatest accomplishments were? They can't think of too many. So what do you guys think were the upsides of Obama's presidency? Or Ronald?
I could name one, but they're both two, but they're both one and the same. Is when he probably within the first 100 days in office, he went ahead and found Saddam Hussein, who was hiding in a hole in the dirt. He went ahead and found him, and then messed around and got intel of where Osama bin Laden was. Mind you, these two characters were just a thought in the wind. Like they could never be found. They could never be found. We don't know where they're at. We don't know where they're at. We were heard that in the bush. In the bush, it's like we're gonna find Osama bin Laden. We're gonna find Saddam Hussein. We don't know where they're at, but we gotta go find them. Barack comes in. He's like, "Oh, I know where they're at. We're gonna go get them. And when we get them, we're gonna go ahead and take them out and make sure that they don't mess with the American people ever again." And so those two instances rang true for me because it's like, okay, you did the one thing that America has tried to do for such a long time, and yet here you are, first black president to get both of them in the same year, but not in the same year, but in the same term. Let me put it like that: in the same term, to get both of them, and basically, awful.
Toby?
This is a hard one because I really wasn't paying attention for most. Like, I'm younger. Like, I don't know exactly how old you guys are, but I know it sounds like you're like 30. Oh, hold on. Okay, good. Yeah, so I know that like I was in 8th grade, 9th grade when Obama was first elected, freshman year of high school, and for me, it's a lot of relearning actually about what Obama did because I really didn't know at the time, even when he. So when he ended his second term, I was like, I really don't know what he did. I know Obamacare was a thing. I wasn't paying attention to when it passed because I was literally like a sophomore in high school. But I think what I saw a lot of was his sort of historic like building of connections. Like with Cuba, he was de-thawing the sort of relations in Cuba, and I was like, okay, that's pretty big. This wasn't really a policy, but he was the first sitting president to speak at Japan, to talk about Hiroshima, and it's just like having these conversations that like people just kind of put under the rug. And I was like, oh snap, this guy's really like, and he even went to the federal prison. Like he was the first president to visit a federal prison. So I was like, he's really good at like starting these conversations, getting things set up. And I know that's not like a policy, but that's also stuff that he did more in his second term. And when I was a little bit more paying attention, like 2015, 2014, 2016. And then he also did like the expunging of a lot of marijuana violations. So he did like a lot of expunging records and just commutations is the formal word of like prison sentences, and I thought that was pretty good. But there wasn't like one thing that I could say that like was his biggest accomplishment, because I feel like I wasn't really in tune enough when things were happening, and I only know about it mostly like in historical things, like the GM bailout or the Recovery Act, but like whatever. I mean, those were sort of things that I guess can happen normally. I mean, now we have much bigger bailouts under this administration, and much bigger recovery acts, even though those are a little bit controversial. We need UBI for all, but that's a separate conversation. So I think Obama did good with kind of opening up those bridges and really trying to like seek change in certain foreign policy and certain relations that we had. I'm trying to remember some other ones, but those are the ones that I can think of off the top of my head.
Don't forget, he also had that swag too. I mean, when he went, I don't care where he was at, whatever engagement he was at, he always had that presence. Like, yes, I'm here. Yes, I'm Barack Obama. No, I'm not some kind of Muslim, even though, yes, my name may suggest it. Like, no, that's not me. But I'm here because I'm here for the people. And I think that probably inspired a little bit more people to kind of get back into politics and kind of like see where he was going, how he's going to lead the country, and especially with the bailout too as well, live through that. So it's like, yeah, he didn't have like a big like trophy case of accomplishments, but he had those little ones where it's like, okay, that's notable, that's noticeable, that's noticeable, that's noticeable, and yeah, that was cool.
It's so strange that we can't. Oh, I was like, it's so strange that we can't have presidencies like the Lyndon B. Johnsons, the JFKs, the FDRs anymore. Like the left has moved so right that like any president has to be pretty much a moderate Republican to even make it that far. But we have another question in the chat about something that was breaking today from what's going on, Sat, about Amy Klobuchar possibly being the vice president for Joe Biden. How do you guys feel about that?
Man, Toby, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, so she's undergoing vetting. I mean, I don't know if formally that means like she is the one, but at the very least, she's formally one of the candidates, not just like on this little media tour that's been going on, the Veep stakes, whatever the heck has been happening. I'm just like, is this really what we're doing right now? I mean, it's a bit interesting, but I feel like if they're all kind of like establishment people. I mean, with Amy, I didn't know if it was going to happen. I know that it made sense from the whole, like Biden wanted someone who could be simpatico, someone who's going to mesh well with him. And Klobuchar seemed to be one of the ones who made the most sense in that regard. I never really saw them ever have any beef on the debate stage or in the campaign that I knew of. Because I mean, I don't really think they're much different, to be honest. I mean, Klobuchar, her thing was like she's very active in the Senate. She co-sponsors a lot of bills. I mean, okay, she can get stuff done, but like criminal justice, sketch. What else did she not do well with? I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm not sure what she's about to carry. I mean, sure, Minnesota, I don't know how much in danger that was of flipping back to the Republicans. So I'm not sure how much she's bringing to that front. Maybe the Midwest, which people say Biden already is better at winning. So is she gonna like be extra Midwest and really bring out the Midwesterner of the Midwestern people and secure the Michigan and Ohio's kind of done. I don't think that's safe. Michigan. What's the other state? Minnesota. I already said. Wisconsin.
Ohio. Wisconsin. Michigan. Oh, never mind. I'm sorry.
Pennsylvania, the states that all went to Trump. So, like, maybe she'll get those. But personally, I'm just like, I didn't really expect anything other than getting someone who was a corporate, in the system Democrat. Like, I'm not like, oh my gosh, how could he? I was like, no, of course, he either was going to do her. He either was going to select. I heard someone from Florida. I wasn't like, this is not shocking for me. It was not really breaking news for me. I didn't know when this process was going to formally start because the convention is not even going to be soon because of COVID. I think the convention's in August now. So I don't know how much time they're really going to like how long are they going to wait, or how much time are they going to leave in between the selecting of the VP and the convention? Because normally that happens literally after the convention, right? That's kind of how this thing mostly works. But usually we also have a tighter race, right? So this time the race is over. So I guess it kind of makes more sense. But I just didn't know if it was going to happen this soon. But that's my take on it. It's just it's not that surprising.
I think it is the absolute most dumbest shit I could think of for them to do right now in the moment. Like, I get it. If you want Trump swing voters, the one thing you should do is get someone who Trump voters like in the Democratic Party. Get Bernie, get Gang, get Tulsi, get someone that a Trump voter could see themselves voting for in the Democratic Party. It is so stupid. This mindset that you don't, it's so stupid, this mindset that you need to move to the center. You need the most moderate ticket of all time to win this election. When the truth is, I like the New York Times take on things. I know everyone like hated the endorsement. It was like trending on Twitter for being so bad, having endorsed both Elizabeth Warren and Amy Klobuchar. But I think the point they made was good, that to win this election, you will need a ticket of a moderate that Democrats like and a progressive, which the youth and the swing states voters like. I would have loved Biden Yang, Biden Bernie, Biden Tulsi. I would have even gone for Biden Warren. But oh my gosh, you choose the most dumbest. I know it's not a phrase, chat. Don't kill me for it. It is the literal epitome of stupidity. It is not good. I think he's put his nail in the coffin.
Yeah, I agree with you, Didi. It's like when I hear Biden Klobuchar, I don't hear a winning ticket whatsoever. I hear a mad scramble to get votes, especially in the swing states. Like I live in Michigan now, and so when I hear Klobuchar in bringing out the Midwest, I'm like, most people in Michigan, they don't really like you that much. Like, no. If anybody who I would have saw on the winning ticket, or at least give Biden a chance. Again, Biden Yang, that makes perfect sense. Perfect sense at all. But the question was a woman VP. I would have went with Elizabeth Warren due to the fact that she didn't take any crap from anybody on the debate stage. However, she was probably like the one that was outspoken as far as saying that she did have Andrew Yang's book and that she did read it. She was reading it. And so she said that a lot of the ideas he have was really good. And so I'm like, that makes sense. Put somebody that knows what the heck is going on and present them in a way where they can actually help you versus hurt you. And at the same time, Elizabeth Warren, excuse me, she has like a mom, grandmother kind of like charm to her, where a lot of people can be like, okay, she's fun, she's hip, she takes selfies with a lot of people, so she's more so like a people person. Like, okay, that makes a little bit more sense because she wants to be engaged with the people. And I can't understand why Biden wouldn't go with Warren. I can't.
Toby, your take on Klobuchar?
Like, I know I've been seeing a lot of people saying like, basically Biden got his butt saved because of the black vote in South Carolina and Super Tuesday. So it's like, what are you going to do, Biden, to shore up the support and not just take it for granted in the general election? So a lot of people are like, oh, whoever it is has to be, a black woman, woman of color, whatever. I mean, I can appreciate the historicness of that, but of course, I think it's important that the policy makes sense. No identity politics here. But at the very least, if you're gonna like at least go down that route and say, "Oh, I must put a woman in," And I mean, there are good reasons for that. Yang also said that it would make sense because organizations perform better with both genders. But really, like Amy Klobuchar, really now, this is who we're gonna have after her like bombing out. I mean, like, she didn't even. I don't even know what she performed in South Carolina, but it wasn't good. I mean, and like she had more like at least recognition. She had more. Like she wasn't fighting as much as like Yang and some others. Like she had corporate support in a way. She surged in New Hampshire, so it's like she still bottomed out with the voters who really mattered, people of color, older voters, and now you're picking her for VP. That's what's happening. Like no, that's like I don't personally have animus towards her. Not that I liked her, but I know after Yang dropped out, I kind of saw a lot of excitement for her in general. Like. I was in Massachusetts, or I am in Massachusetts. I canvassed a little bit for Yang up in New Hampshire, and there were so many Amy signs. It was actually kind of ridiculous how many Amy signs there were. Like some of these were like superstar, like green signs everywhere in these houses, and this was like 2 days before the primary. So I'm just like, dang, Amy and Pete are gonna. I knew that they were gonna do well, but like outside of that little bubble, where's her support? So I didn't have any animus for her. I appreciated some things, like yeah, she's. You know, she sponsors a lot of bills. She gets things done. She's not very partisan, whatever. And I actually had some friends who said that she could actually have done very well as a nominee because she had a lot of support from even like Republicans in the Senate, right? A lot of Senate Republicans said that she would actually make a decent president, but she would never win the primary. I remember back when she first announced her candidacy in February, I saw articles about like, it was literally called like Senate Republicans are gushing over Amy Klobuchar and like House Republicans too. So like, I kind of saw that there might have been some kind of advantages that she had, but as Biden's VP, it doesn't make sense. Like I knew it's what he was probably going to go with, one of the people, but it doesn't make sense electorally. I'm not sure what advantage he's getting here. I'm not saying that he should have just picked Kamala or he should have picked Stacey Abrams, but like it's not going to really help the cause at all. Like you said, the moment and the timing is just doesn't excite anything.
I think
somebody said Michelle.
Oh gosh.
Somebody said Michelle Obama. And again, you know, if you think about it, it makes sense. You know, it's just the reverse. Instead of it being Obama Biden, now it's Biden Obama. So like, okay, that might work.
I think to this day, it should have been Biden Yang. It should have been Biden Yang. I feel like that ticket sweeps easily. You get Trump supporters, you get the Democrats, you get the black vote. Yang, I hate this system where the entire democratic process is handled in pretty much three, 4, 5 states. Like you get Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, and once it hits Super Tuesday, the election's pretty much already done. Mm-hmm. And why do we leave this thing up to the 2 states that have about 97% white people? I mean, I don't hate white people, but I just think that I don't hate white people, but I just think that the states that decides the nominee for the president of the United States should reflect America. I remember the day I saw that poll from New Mexico that had Yang in 3rd place. 3rd place. Imagine if they start in New Mexico, we might have nominee Yang. People see he's eligible and boom, straight to the skies. He had massive support among the black community, even though he constantly get accused of being a white supremacist, which I still do not get. But hey, the media will be the media. Yes. Yeah, guys, remember, Yang is a white supremacist. Check the pin tweet on my thread.
Yes. Oh man, that's hilarious.
He got called out for it on stage. The guy was like, "Hey, He was like, I don't look like a white supremacist." Oh man, how do you guys feel about the election?
About the election?
About the order of states we use.
Oh my goodness! I actually don't know, Ron, if you're about to say something.
Oh yeah.
Nope. Go for it. Go for it.
Okay.
Have at it.
Yeah. This whole order of states is kind of atrocious a little bit. So I know I've seen some ideas, like after the phenomenal chaos and catastrophe that was Iowa, there were people who were like, okay, Iowa, like everyone was like, yeah, they're never going again. It wasn't formally said, but we all kind of know that that's not happening again. Even New Hampshire is kind of like, there were some students actually from like the Virginia, DC area. I remember there's like some teenage black girl and some group of students who came up to talk to I think the Secretary of State for the New Hampshire, like, or whoever was in charge of like, I guess the elections and like setting the date. I forgot that formal position, but whoever that guy in New Hampshire was, like, he's been there for 40 years or whatever. This girl was like challenging him. And I remember hearing about it on Boston Public Radio, and she like had a lot of questions and she had done a lot of research. And the guy was a bit like fumbling around, kind of like indignant, like, no, this is how things have been. But she made a lot of good points, I guess, about how like this process, like New Hampshire, why do you have the first primary? Like, they have that law that says literally they have to be the first. But it's like, for why though? Like, why? What is New Hampshire's population that is so special that they can just be, you know, the first to go? I would say at least Iowa has some kind of more charm to it. Like, you know, you had all those little like places in Iowa. I would see Yang at like burger flipping. He was literally flipping burgers and handing food at one of his little town halls. And there's some charm that Iowa has. I don't know what New Hampshire is and like why it's the first primary. And not that Iowa should stay, they shouldn't. But overall, like I saw some people who had pretty decent ideas. Some got shot down by some people, but one idea was that you could have states that, you know, have like kind of like Mississippi, and states that like have like a bigger black population. Like Mississippi is one of the biggest actually in the country, 33%, 34%. And I didn't even know that until a few years ago. Alabama's 25%. These states could make sense. I mean, just like you have South Carolina, but you also should have more places because South Carolina is also not representative of the whole black population, right? So I think it actually makes sense. Like Michigan, that could have been interesting because you have Detroit, Pennsylvania, you have Philly. Like there are many Midwestern states that have certain black populations that could have been early states. North Carolina would have actually been a great early state because North Carolina is a swing state. South Carolina. So this is the thing that gets me angry about even the whole logic with Biden and how like, oh, he won, he got the black vote. Like, okay, he got votes that really are going to make zero difference in the general election. What world is Alabama, Mississippi ever going to vote Democrat? When is South Carolina voting Democrat? Maybe Jamie Harrison for Senate, which is a big thing. But besides him, like, is South Carolina winning anytime soon? Does it matter that Biden got this like black vote? Because it's not like that's going to somehow be indicative of him winning. Like, he's not going to win these states. So I feel like it makes sense to center more swing states. I will say that New Hampshire and Iowa were important in that respect because Obama won Iowa, and it also helped him carry Iowa by like 10 points when he was in the general election. He didn't win New Hampshire, right? I think Clinton won, but then he still won New Hampshire in the general. So those states, I can at least say there's some kind of swing state. So it could help the primary, shore up some support, and then help win the general. So you could say North Carolina, you could say Michigan, you could say you get a few core early states as well, like core Dem states like California or New York, but then also get some more, like Texas would actually be a great one. And it is a Super Tuesday state. But Texas is a good one because there is such a diverse population within the state. It's basically a country.
I hate when I would debate with people about why Iowa shouldn't be first. The first thing you jump to is, in 2008, Iowa elected Barack Obama. Hey, I'm not racist. I have a black friend. Come on. It's not exciting. It's not the point. You're not representative of the country. Just because you liked the black guy one time doesn't make you Martin Luther King. Come on. That makes me freaking mad when they use that line.
Oh, man.
That would get me so infuriated.
See, I know because I told you brought up how Michigan is one of those swing states that could have went first. Yes, very much so, because Michigan is one of those states where, if you think about it, it's almost like, of course, you got your cities like Detroit, you got your cities like Flint, you got your cities like Battle Creek, Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo, where the majority of the population is heavily African American, heavily black. And then you got your other cities like Traverse City, Mount Pleasant, so forth and so forth, Saugatuck, Grand Haven, South Haven, where the majority of those are pretty much going to be, you know, your white folks, your Caucasians, your Caucasian population. Excuse me, getting tongue-tied. That there would have been able to set the tone everywhere because the populations is so unique. It's very much diverse, and it's not just one. It's more so like you got a pocket here, you got a pocket here, you got a pocket here, you got a pocket here. But you put all those pockets together, it makes it a very well-rounded state, you know. And again, Michigan, yes, it is one of those swing states where it could go Republican, it could go Democrat, depending on what's at stake, who's on the ballot, and if those people that's on the ballot have enough attention to be able to make a difference, you know. And I believe that had um, had Michigan been one of those first few states, along with Nevada, along with California, along with Texas, heck, we could have even said New York, you know, throw those in there. As far as primary states goes, I think the outcome would have been very much different than what we have now. And to pretty much to go on to add on what Jeannie was saying, we very well could have had a nominee Yang. We very well could have had a nominee Yang and have a ticket where it would have won by a landslide, like hands down. Why? Because Yang was one of those candidates that was forward thinking, wasn't thinking about the past, wasn't trying to preserve the present, but was more so worried about what's going to happen in the future. And we need to make preparations now so that when that future comes, we're not caught with our pants between our legs.
Yeah, to be honest, this like idea that Yang is some like lower tier, not famous. I live here I live around Virginia, and I walked around store to store, and people, and I would wear, you know, my math gear, and people would actually be like, "Hey, Yang, oh yeah, get that $1,000 a month." And people are excited for these ideas. It's something new. It's something fresh. I can get behind getting money. Can't anyone?
Yeah.
But
yeah. Of course. Like who would not want an extra $1,000 in their pocket? I mean, you know, if you think about what's going on right now, okay, and Yang being, let's say everything worked out, the stars were aligned, that Yang was the nominee, okay. Mm-hmm. And Yang is out there looking for a VP, whoever that VP is, because I know he said he wanted to be a woman, so we'll leave that out on whatever, okay. But still, he's the nominee, and the conversations he's been started since his campaign. Now he's in a position where he could get those ideas implemented. Like right then in November, it would change how politics forever. It would change how people view politics. It will change how people view politicians that's running. Like, hey, this man's giving me $1,000 a month. Okay, what are you going to bring to the table that's going to help keep my $1,000 a month? Especially when I don't have a job and I don't have anything coming in. What are you going to do? What policies that you have that are going to help? What's the word I'm looking for? Amplify. There we go. What he's doing and not hurt me in the long run. And so now with UBI at the center of pretty much everybody's conversation, now everybody's had to kind of bring some kind of tangibles of, okay, well, I want to be able to give everybody $2,000 a month because I know $1,000 a month, it may not cover it. Or how about I give everybody $1,500 a month, and then each child in the household gets like $500 a month, you know? That works. But still, that conversation needed to be had in order for those ideas to be put out.
Oh, man. Oof. Hey, what are your guys', besides the freedom dividend, what policy of Yang's do you guys like the most?
Interesting.
I'll start since I just jumped that on you guys like that.
I got one particular. I got one.
I love Yang Care. I think Yang Care was one of the most forward-thinking healthcare policies ever. Mm-hmm. I think definitely, like, if there was, even though it wasn't much of an insurance plan, just the plan in general to both bring healthcare down and also, you know, make healthcare cheaper and advanced technologies using telehealth, using newer technologies like like portable dialysis machines and things that cost cheaper that aren't allowed right now because of big pharma, and using that to bring down the price of healthcare while simultaneously bringing up taxes a little bit so you can actually meet in the middle instead of pulling $50 trillion out of thin air to pay for it. I loved Yang Care. I feel like Yang Care having, and also his focus on preventative health. Yang Care is definitely a healthcare system I would subscribe to.
Yes.
How about you guys?
Yeah, so that was actually one that was interesting. I didn't fully read the whole kind of like blog that he had posted about it, but I did see some of those things about the telemedicine, about the licensing. And I've heard him talk about that too. Like there were some times where he was able to give longer answers on healthcare at some town halls. And he basically talked about how he wanted to reduce licensing across states because, like he says, your anatomy doesn't change very much when you go across state borders. So why do you need like 50 different licenses? And that just gets very expensive. If you want to practice healthcare in different states, you need all these licenses. So I thought he had a lot of very good points. And I do agree that, like, unfortunately, the whole Medicare for all thing tainted, like the whole debate, we all know, unfortunately, too well. But I feel like if there was a context where we could have just talked about these things, I'm actually surprised that it didn't come out. I'm trying to remember if it was the December debate where it would have came out, because I guess Yang Care he did drop some time in December, and then the December debate happened, but healthcare was not something that came up much, which is probably for the best because it dominates the discussion so much. And then the New Hampshire debate, it really didn't come up there, and he never got a chance to talk about it. He never got questioned about it. But that aside, I thought it was pretty smart, and I wish that a lot of those ideas could have been explored more, because really you do have to get into the weeds and like get things lower before, like you say, get the $1 trillion and just cover everyone. Let's get rid of the inefficiencies and all the things that make things so expensive. But a lot of people just, are much more like angered about like how the fact that we even can be bankrupt medically, and they just wanted Medicare for all. And I'm not even like super anti Medicare for all. Like I have some friends who are like, don't care, public option Medicare for all, just something that expands. And I was also much less versed on healthcare, so I wasn't that passionate about it. But I did like a lot of the democracy reforms, because I'm thinking like things are going to be the same crap over and over again unless you reform things very structurally. So democracy dollars is of course a great one. I liked ranked choice voting. I actually took a class when I was in grad school. It was called like computational social choice, which basically talked about voting systems. And they talked about similar things to ranked choice voting, where you can weight the different candidates you want, and then you actually have a much more true preference than like what we call the plurality, rule, where whoever gets the most wins, even if they don't get the majority, right? And then you do have instant runoff voting and things like that. But I think just ranked choice voting was a big one that would have helped. You have, there were a few other democracy reforms that I can't remember right now, but I thought they were pretty good. I mean, there was one that I don't know how practical it was, but getting modernized voting and trying to like vote on your smartphone using like authentication. So he said blockchain. I think blockchain might be a little overkill, but some kind of authentication system to vote online. I've actually said biometrics would be great. This was before I even knew who Yang was. Like 2017, 2018, I was like, let's get biometrics. This kills the argument of voter suppression versus voter fraud. And that's a great topic we can talk about later. But if you have biometrics, then boom, now there is no fraud because you're linked to your fingerprint or whatever. And there can be no suppression because you don't have like archaic ID requirements, which I do understand. There's a lot of trash rules that the GOP has made in like Texas and other states where they let gun licenses allowed, but not college licenses. So clearly they're playing the game of what voters they want. But so I definitely agree that if you can modernize voting, that would have been a huge one. But I don't think that was like a policy that would have been anywhere near ready to roll out for a while. Especially people, if anything, want to go backwards. They want to get paper ballots. They don't want anything to do with technology because of what happened with 2016. Even 2018, I think there were some technical problems. But I think those were democracy reforms, even small ones like Election Day. Oh, yeah, right there. Thank you. Iowa. In Nevada had to scramble to make sure that didn't happen. So I think a lot of those democracy reforms were pretty good. That's why he had his A rating on Equal Citizens, tied with Bernie. So if a lot of that stuff happened, it would have helped give power back to these communities. People don't donate to political campaigns. Democracy dollars, boom. That helps communities of color as well. Everyone can sponsor what they need in their local communities, vote for local candidates, state candidates. And I thought his reforms would have just done great in general with engaging people, giving people the power back. Yes, everything else is important when it comes to obviously the freedom dividend, when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to some of the other things. But the democracy reforms were big. Oh, and the scorecard, actually, that was actually one of my favorite ones. I would say even more so than the dividend, because the dividend is a mechanism, but the American scorecard, human-centered capitalism, is the sort of reasoning that we are more important than the corporations. We're more important than GDP and these measurements. We are the measurements, how we are doing. And then mechanically you change that. And then the freedom dividend is just like a personification of that. Everyone gets the money because you matter. But in general, basically saying that humans are the capital and we are the most important thing. Flint would not still not have water, because we're not going to say things like, oh, it's too expensive to, help these people not drink lead water and not die. I'm just like, what? Same thing with like climate change and these other things. Like if you look at the cost long term, you're going to actually realize you have to do something about climate. You have to do something about environmental reforms in general. But unfortunately, it's too expensive and it doesn't matter. It doesn't mesh with corporate stuff. So I would say that human-centered capitalism actually might have been the number one, like really core policy, just because of how much it would have changed, and it would have incentivized a lot more local. It would have just helped connect a lot more of the local on the ground actions with what happens in federal policy. And that's like really the big disconnect. And the last thing, because I've been talking a bit, is that Yang said that the feedback mechanism was broken. It's way too out of date. It takes like 10 years, maybe. It takes decades for things to happen that finally affect change. So he said that the feedback loop is way too slow. It's broken. And that was a big thing that I empathized with. I mean, I know you're in tech as well, just like me. So you can definitely think like if feedback isn't happening, it's like, what is going on? Like we're not improving the system. You have to have fast iteration. And I thought that would have just been great with everything that Yang was doing. But here we are, May 21st. No Yang.
Okay. My little two cents of the pot is I like the 10 by 10 idea that he had, which was pretty much involved in the education reform.
Underrated.
And what people don't realize, come on, what people don't realize about the 10 by 10 is this, and it makes sense. You pledge 10% of your income for 10 years. After your 10 years, your whole student loans are pretty much paid in full. Anything else, done. That to me was probably like the most phenomenal idea ever. Think about it. If I go to school and I get a degree in philosophy, but I don't use it, but if I could still pay like 10% of my income to pretty much pay off my student loans, I'm golden. And that's a game changer that would have helped a lot of people, especially a lot of people that went to these colleges that were for profit, and yet they got shut down because they didn't actually meet the criteria of the real working world or what the employers were looking for when you got out of school. So it's like that would have helped a lot, especially those people that messed around and went to these colleges and universities that are now closed and probably defaulted on their student loans because they can't find a job in the degree field or the degree that they went to school for. So it's like, give them a break. 10% of your income, that's nothing if you think about it. So if you make like, let's say, $25,000 a year, okay, that's $2,500 that you pay back to have all your student loans forgiven, and even say, it's paid in full. Phenomenal. Like, who would not want that? Who would not want to be able to go to school, get the degree that they actually want and be settled in, and pay back little by little on your 10th year that you paid. Mind you, you had to make sure you didn't miss any payments. That's a ticker. As long as you made your payments on time, you're good. But even still, if you think about it, if it's 10% of your income and it comes out like your normal taxes would, you wouldn't even see it anyways. You wouldn't even miss what you've been making. So it works out. It works out. It works out. And that there would have probably pushed more people to go to school. It would have pushed more people to actually graduate and even still like get a degree or get a trade that they feel comfortable, doing for the rest of their life. And know that at the end of their 10 years, they're good. They don't have to have, thousands upon thousands of dollars in student loan debt. That's all done and good for.
Wow. Man, I actually did like that student forgiveness plan as well. It was great. But as we come to a close here, it's getting close to 10 o'clock. My charisma runs out at 10 o'clock. I turn back into the zombie I was born as. So I have one more question for you guys. What is your favorite Yang criticism? I'm going to start out.
Okay.
One of the things that derailed this campaign, mine personally, was obviously I made an entire thread about this, so it's actually my pinned tweet if you go look at it, at Genie Shinobi. If you're here, you probably already know, but
there you go.
It's the one that Yang is a white supremacist. He mentions one time that in his book that the group he is worried most about is the middle class, middle of the country, white America, because they're the most likely to, take their rage and actually take it on things. And we've seen it happen time and time again. And he says he needs to help them as well through this. And all of a sudden he's wearing the Klan hood, walking around Nazi symbols. And like anyone knows that's not Yang. And they were still pushing this agenda all the way up until, I don't know, he got that endorsement from Dave Chappelle. And it's just so strange how they push this narrative despite him having so much Black support and all of us just being ignored in favor of the narrative. It's like two sides. Like, one, it's wrong. Two, people like us get ignored. All right, I'm done. Somebody else?
I mean, I know people talk so much about the whole Yang's a libertarian Trojan horse.
Come on.
Oh my God. Yang is a humanitarian Trojan horse, first of all.
There you go.
So I remember saying that one somewhere. No, but I would say the legit criticisms, and even some of the Yang gang, I mean, Scott Stanton himself, he wrote the article, great article about this is the most progressive policy proposed by any of the candidates. And he was talking about how, 96% of families on welfare, or 96% of families in poverty can't even apply for welfare, right? So it's something like they don't get it. It just falls right through the crack. 78% of people in poverty don't get housing benefits. It was kind of ridiculous looking at those numbers and thinking that our current safety system is okay. Clearly there's a huge problem. But Yang didn't seem to... I would say, I guess in this case, it's my favorite in terms of, it actually was a little bit legit. I think that the libertarian Trojan horse is ridiculous, and I laugh every time. But it was legitimate to kind of question why certain things didn't stack. And I think the real answer was that they either don't get it in the first place because of those numbers of 96% not getting it, or if they got it, they wouldn't even be able to keep it with $1,000 a month. And that was the biggest thing that I feel like Yang never really emphasized, is that even if you kept your benefits, it's a false choice. That's not a real thing that happens. If you get $1,000 a month, a lot of times you will be not eligible to keep the rest. And I feel like there could have been a much better explanation of some of these things, because everyone just kept harping on it, especially the more liberal people. They kept harping on it. Oh, he won't let you choose. The poorest of the poor, they can't get anything more than 1,000. Well, meanwhile, the billionaires get 1,000, and people who don't need it get 1,000. And it's just we never got past that enough, because I feel like that was a big stumbling block where people wouldn't say they had concerns about it. Even people who liked them were still saying, I had concerns about this. the value-added tax criticism, I would say that one wasn't as legit because it was said many times that he could exempt, you can exempt the staples, and people just didn't care. They kept saying that poor people are going to get. No matter how many times you said this thing, it's like you can exempt the staple. My God. But I think that it was a bit legit to think about. Hey, make sure that. I think even I was starting to think at one point. He was saying that you had to give up the other. You had to give up certain benefits. But then he also said that he would help people who might, for instance, already maybe they're people who like make $1,200 in benefits or make $900, right? So they don't get as much of a net benefit, and they could still get hit by certain items that weren't luxury, that weren't staples. So Yang said that he would somehow add back more benefits to help compensate these people. It got a little bit twisted, and I feel like there could have been better messaging on some of that. Still way better than our current system. Scott Santens believes it. All of us believe it. But I think there was enough of murkiness that it was just a stumbling block. And even now, there's still random Twitter threads where people say, oh, you know, Yang's idea was dumb and he's going to hurt people. And it's just like, ugh. So anyways, enough of me on that.
Ronnie.
I haven't heard that in a while. I think the one that stuck out the most throughout this whole campaign was he did not have enough Black supporters, which I think was very much false, because no matter what happened or what was going on, he always had something going on. He always had a group of us together to do something, to push a narrative like, you know, this is what Andrew Yang is trying to do for us as a community, you know, and I think that even on the campaign trail, because there wasn't a whole lot of us out there, they kind of said, oh, you know, he really doesn't have any Black supporters. Like there's really not a whole lot of Black people that support Andrew Yang. But it's like in his book, the War on Normal People, he talked about that there's some people they're not able to go out and campaign because they don't have the disposable income to do so. And so for them to come on the campaign trail or for them to not be able to pay a bill, that's real. And what he wanted to do was eliminate that. But beside all of that, it's the simple fact of the matter that, yes, he had a huge Black support group that kind of flew underneath the radar for a lot of things, you know, and it wasn't until it was like, boom, right there in front of your face, like, oh, he does have Black supporters. Like, yes, he does have Black supporters. And yes, they are very much real. No, they're not Russian robots. They're human beings. They have jobs. They work 9 to 5s like pretty much everybody else. You know, they have lives of their own too. But at the same time, that narrative that he didn't have the Black support, he couldn't get the Black support, I think that's false. But what it does do now is it does put the emphasis on, if he does run again in 2024, that those same collective group of Black folks that were with him before, they come back in full force and be like, you know, hey, this is our guy. This is who we want. And if you don't like it, oh well. But you're going to hear about this man giving you $1,000 a month whether you want it or not. And you can take it or you can take it. Your choice. So that's mine.
Oh, man. Wow. Thank you so much, guys, for coming. Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Heidi, James, Buster, Cat Mommy, whatever your real name is.
I got Sass over here. So, yeah, you know, you probably know.
And also Toby and Ronnie, or Ronald.
Hey, either or, I don't care. Just don't help me late for dinner.
He's gonna kick me out the stream if I call him Ronnie.
This is cool. This is the first time I've been on this, so you know, thanks for having me. And it's crazy. It's just the three of us, right? The other ones that I was watching was, you know, 4 of y'all plus Heidi plus James. So this was just like, whoa, we really owned the stage, and it was nice. You know, it definitely makes me even more anticipating things to come.
Oh, wow.
I mean, again, you Toby, you did bring up one topic for the next discussion. So I think it's only fair. I think it's only fair that you come back with your topic that you mentioned. Hopefully you can remember what you talked about as far as voter suppression and voter segregation.
Yes.
We got to talk about it. We got to talk about it. And you guys, again, thank you guys for watching. If you guys come back again next week, we're going to talk about that. Hopefully we can get a little bit more discussion going on, especially with the chat, because chat, you guys are awesome. You guys are awesome. You guys are awesome. We love you. Again, we're off. I'm Ronald. Jeannie.
Jeannie. Adios.
We're out.
All right. Have a good night.
See ya.